Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our regular scheduled city council meeting. Today is Tuesday, October 15th, 2024 at 6 p.m. And I'll call this meeting to order. And as always, let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we'll ask our clerk, Barb, to read the open meeting statement for us.
This meeting and all meetings of the Common Council are open to the public. Proper notice has been posted and given to the media in accordance with Wisconsin state statutes, so the citizens may be aware of the time, place, and agenda of this meeting.
And would you also take roll, Barb?
Mayor Smith,
Here.
Colin Dykstra,
Here.
Paul Hagan, Eric Helverson,
Here.
Dimitri Martin,
Here.
Paul Mayo,
Here.
Corey Nagel,
Here.
Eric Olson,
Here.
Dave Peterson,
Here.
Scott Perchatsky,
Here.
Henry Veliker.
Here.
9 present, we have a quorum.
Thanks, Barb. And also, can you start the introduction of the department heads?
Barb Nowak, City Clerk.
Aaron Jensen, City Administrator.
Matt Klatt, Airport Manager.
Eric Bailey, Library Director.
Stephanie Reif, Finance Director.
Justin Behrens, Director of Public Works.
Laura Colbert, Parks and Rec Director.
Brian Hosell, Chief of Police.
All right, thank you. Next up, then, we have a consent agenda. The items that you see on the agenda are what we're going to be voting on. Unless you see one of those items that you would like to see moved to the regular agenda where we would vote on that individually. Otherwise, we'll vote on all these together with one motion. We would need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion by Olson, second by Dykstra, that we approve the consent agenda as printed. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Against, say no. Motion carried. All right, under regular agenda, again, we have no new things to put on the agenda. The one thing that I am going to ask you to do, and I know this is a little out of character here, but under new business number 2, we're going to take that right after we approve this agenda, if you're okay with that. So with that one change, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve with the amendment.
Motion by Peterson.
Second.
I'm sorry, who was that, Henry?
Yeah.
Yeah, second by Veliker, that we approve the regular agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against, say no. Motion carried. All right, so let's just skip ahead here real quick, and I'm just doing this because Justin has a commitment tonight, and I want to make sure that he doesn't feel rushed for that. So we're going to go to the. It's all his fault here. So we're going to go to the item number 2, which is the 5G co-location agreement with U.S. Cellular. Justin,
I appreciate that, Mayor. I guess I owe you one now. So
you owe me a lot more than that.
Was not expecting it, but I'm ready to go. So, so this is an action item starting on page 75 of the packet with basically information in my memo. This is basically an agreement between the City of Waupaca and U.S. Cellular, and it would be to include some 5G equipment in our downtown. Page 76 is a pole in Rasmussen Park. That is a city-owned pole. It used to hold a tornado siren. Now it basically is just a box with electrical lines in it to help power stuff in the park, in particular Christmas lights. And what has prompted this is U.S. Cellular is currently installing 5G equipment throughout the city. One of the areas they wanted to install it was in our downtown area, just north of the Danes home. And when we started reviewing that, we asked them not to install a new overhead pole. And with our ordinance and with state statutes, there's certain things we can ask, and there's certain things we cannot. And this one we asked politely because we could not require them. If they wanted to push forward with the original plan, they could have, because there's existing overhead lines in that general area. But they were gracious enough to work through this with us. So what follows their initial plan is an agreement. There was a number of back and forths between our attorney and their attorney. At the very end, what you see in the packet is what is agreed upon by both parties. Basically, we will give them the right to install that equipment on our pole. They have the right to maintain it. We have the right to maintain our pole. Both parties have to be responsible enough and keep their equipment up to date and sound. In exchange of all this, we will receive a payment of $270 a year. And that, when we looked into that, that's the max allowed by the FCC, so we cannot go any higher than that. So it doesn't sound like a huge number. It probably isn't, but that's what we can do by law. We do have the right to review that. Every few years in the agreement, we can look at that and we can adjust that with notification to U.S. Cellular if both parties are in agreement. And then both parties can terminate this agreement with proper notification as well. So if it's not something the city wants to do in the future, we can back out if we want to, and vice versa, U.S. Cellular can back out as well. You may have recalled this was on a previous agenda. It was tabled. What they found out was there's bedrock that prohibited them to get up to this area. They had to readjust. Now that they know they can get there by a different means, they have submitted new plans. The old plans are shown in here. I have reviewed them. We need to finish a review, approve them, and then turn it over to WPS because there's going to be their own separate meter on this pole as well. So once it meets all the appropriate approvals after tonight, then they'll get working on installing it. So guess what I'm looking for is just council approval to go in agreement with U.S. Cellular for this co-location at Nels Rasmussen Park.
Okay. Anybody have any questions of Justin? Looking for a motion then upon his request?
Motion to approve the equipment installation and maintenance easement agreement with US Cellular.
Second.
Motion by Dykstra, second by Olson. Any discussion, further discussion? We need a roll call vote.
Paul Mayo,
Aye.
Corey Nagel,
Aye.
Henry Veliker,
Aye.
Eric Halverson,
Aye.
Dave Peterson,
Aye.
Colin Dykstra,
Aye.
Dimitri Martin,
Aye.
Eric Olson,
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky.
Aye.
9 ayes, motion carried.
So, thank you, Justin. Yeah.
No, thank you.
All right, so when we get under department head reports too, we'll start with you too, so, okay? You are the privileged child tonight, so. All right, under announcements and correspondence, going backwards here, we have public input. If there's anybody in the audience that would, or council members or staff that would like to speak to us on a non-agenda item, please step up to the podium, give your name and address, limit your time to 3 minutes or less. Anybody have any non-agenda items they want to discuss? All right, let's move on then. We have the reports for this week. We have Kathy Fell, who is reporting on the Waupaca Arts for the Waupaca Area Arts and Culture Network. Kathy, if you want to take the podium, introduce
Can you hear
yourself.
me?
Yes.
We can.
My name is Kathy Fail, and I'm the artistic director of the Waupaca Arts Organization, or Waupaca Arts, which operates the Gerald Opera House in Waupaca, which it purchased in 2007. Thank you for giving me this time. Waupaca Arts is a member of the Waupaca Area Arts and Culture Network that is a product of the Waupaca Cultural Plan that was initiated in 2018. We want to thank the council for your continued support of the arts in our communities. Last year, the poster case in the City Hall lobby for members of the arts group was new. Speaking for Waupaca Arts, we have used it and have heard from people who see our posters there, and thank you again for making this possible. Some of the activities of the past year include the premiere of Back on Track, of which we were one of the producers last spring. It's about Mike Kirk and the train depot. And we'll be screening it again during our upcoming film festival. And this will be on Saturday, November 16th at 5 o'clock. If any of you missed it, I recommend seeing it on the big screen if you can. It's very well done and enjoyable to watch, and very much a Waupaca concern. This past August, we produced A Talent for Murder, which was about a talent contest taking place in the late 50s at the Gerald. A lot of the talent was from Waupaca as well as Waupaca and Appleton. And our next event on the calendar is Dead Man's Carnival, which we regularly feature around this time of year. This will be November 2nd. It's a circus vaudeville event from Milwaukee. And then comes the International Film Festival, November 13th through 16th. We'll be housing visiting filmmakers in Waupaca. And they come from, this year I think we're getting somebody from Finland, a lot of people from California. We get people from all over the place. It's kind of nice. On Wednesday, November 13th, we will be screening Psycho, with the Hitchcock movie, with an intro by William Gillard, who was the speaker at Winchester Academy on Monday the 11th. He's an expert on Robert Bloch, and that's who he'll be speaking about, I believe, at Winchester, who wrote Psycho while living in Waupaca. We will be showing 61 films from around the world, chosen from 304 submissions, including many with Wisconsin connections. This year we made a film featuring several high school kids, playing high school kids, that we started developing with them in January. We shot throughout the spring and summer all around Waupaca County as their schedules allowed. And this winter, we will be editing the film and look forward to screening it in the spring. December 7th, we have as always, our Christmas Santa at the Gerald after the Christmas parade. We invite everybody in for hot chocolate and cookies and the jazz band and Santa Claus and the choir. And usually get a lot of people just coming in out of the cold to enjoy some songs and so forth. And in January, we'll be hosting the Waupaca Community Theater's winter musical, The Kids Left, The Dog Died, Now What? We are asking the residents of Waupaca to continue to support us, to be part of our audience, and to participate in our projects. Waupaca Arts encourages youth to participate in our core mission, which is making new works in theater and film. We believe that it is good for the community to have members that want to be part of writing, acting in, and producing America's entertainment. We are grateful for the support Waupaca provides in so many ways. We greatly appreciate the time and consideration that this council has taken to provide platforms and support for all of the artistic endeavors in our communities. Thank you, and I'd be happy to take any questions. Yeah.
Go ahead, Dave, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I just would like to ask, I misheard you or didn't pick it
Excuse
up
me?
clearly. When, where, and time for the train derailment,
It's Saturday, the 16th, at 5 o'clock.
and where?
At the Gerald Opera House.
Okay, thank
in
you.
Waupaca. Do you know where that is? It's on Main Street, just off of Pine.
Tom?
I didn't grow up here, so I don't know a lot of the things about Waupaca, but I keep hearing different people tell me which house was the inspiration for Psycho. Can you tell me
Sure,
which
it's-
that is now?
It's on Main Street in Waupaca. This is all speculation, but what happened was that Bloch sold the story to Hitchcock, and the story is that he sent his scene designers out here and got some spots that he reproduced that were in Waupaca, and then the Psycho house is the one. It was lived in by a judge. I can't think of the guy's name. A while ago. You know the house, Dimitri? You
Judge
probably
Kirk's
know.
house, I think.
No?
Yeah,
It's
Judge Kirk's
on
house.
South Main. Henry, you know?
Well, it's Judge Kirk's former
Yeah,
house.
that's it. It's a
Yeah.
big,
He's a psych.
beautiful house.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Henry, go
Well,
ahead.
that's a good segue. Thank you. Really go to the film festival. It is really fun. Lorinda, my wife, she's gone every year. She dragged me there a couple times the first few years, but I look forward to going, and it's a really good time. So I would really encourage you, at least try one night. It's
Oh.
fun.
You can look it up. Look up, the schedule is posted on the Wega Arts website, wegaarts.org, or you can go to our Facebook page and message us any questions. We do have food and a full bar with, pop, beer, wine, whatever you want. Which is important, because if people are there, as they often are, watching films all day long, and all evening. This is kind of how it works. Starts in the early afternoon, then goes.
And there's a
Well-
couple watering holes just within a couple feet of each.
Well, this is true. This is true, but anyway, we try to give it a nice environment. With popcorn and candy, too.
Cool. Anybody else have any questions? All right, well,
This is,
Kathy.
this is our 14th film festival, this will be the 14th year. Might want to
Nice.
think about that. Okay, thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up, our department head reports, and we'll start with our Director of Public Works, Mr. Behrens.
You're too kind, Mayor. My report starts on page 24 of the packet. Wastewater, we have a couple of our major projects are just kind of rolling along. The airport, waiting on delivery of the lift station. We're looking to clean up the final assessments and get that resolution back to council before the end of the year. The preliminary study for the Bowlby lift station is complete. We're looking to put an ITA or an intent to apply in for the Clean Water Fund. That's through the Wisconsin DNR. And the benefit of that is could be a very low interest rate on a loan or some principal forgiveness. And we will not know that unless we submit this first application. It does not lock us into anything at this point, so we're just going to see where we land versus the other communities. Water utility, our new backup generator is delivered and installed. We're waiting to make the final connection to a gas feed and then also electrical, but pretty soon it'll be up and running and serving our utility. Something we'll be reviewing soon in utility board is we're updating our inventory for the lead and copper rule. We have to make this public, so this is something that will be submitted to the DNR by tomorrow. We worked with the with the IT department on this records, or with the records, and then making those public. We'll be sending out notifications to certain property owners soon, per the regulation, and we can make some sound judgments on getting the lead out. Facility side, working at the rec center, we're trying to put together all the information we can on those boilers to get those replaced. Obviously, the optimal time to replace boilers is in the summertime, but with lead times as they are, we're putting that stuff together now so we can get an order together and get that rolling as soon as the capital budget is approved. And then finally, I'd like to highlight the tree trek. This is the city's first tree trek, and what a tree trek is a self-guided educational tour. It is out at the Eco Park. This last spring, we planted 54 city trees. Rotary helped out and planted their own trees, plus the educational document that you're seeing within the packet. So all of this, the 50-plus trees, plus the effort that was put in, staking, mulching, the signage, in this educational was all 50-50 matched by the Wisconsin DNR through their urban forestry project or program. Anybody can go out there. You can download this booklet, or you can just go to City Hall or any other city place and grab one and go out there, or you can just walk out there with your smartphone, take a picture of these placards. The QR code will take you to another website and give you more information on all these trees. So we don't highlight every 50-plus tree out there. We just a few. So it's a great add to the park, and it's something that we could build on into the future.
Cool. Anybody have any questions of Justin? All right, thank you, Justin. Let's go over to Matt.
Thank you, Mayor. Earlier this month, we had a based aircraft strike a sandhill crane on departure. There was minor damage and no injuries. The incident was reported, and amazingly, the bird survived, and it's going to be rehabilitated. We have a fly-in on October 26th that we're hosting, brats and hamburgers. The airport remains very active. Fuel sales are still at an all-time high. Tuesday nights, we started about a month and a half ago. We do aviation trivia night. So they're just wrapping up right about now. We have good turnout, and our Thursdays continue to be very active for breakfast.
Nice. Matt, any questions? All right, let's go over to the library. Eric?
Excellent. Library's report starts at page 8 in your packet. Quick update on the head of youth services position. Our second posting of that closed this past Friday. We've got a couple more applicants who we'll be talking to. Hope to have that filled, fingers crossed, by start of November. We have a couple new staff members that have joined the library. Well, one. We filled our library associate opening that had been vacated by Laura Jandasek, who had stepped in at technical services for Jan Popple, who is now the head of adult services. And that position was filled by Mary Burkett, who we hired as a library assistant a few months back. It's a position that'll be focused on helping out Molly Renke with our programming and outreach. And Mary's position as library assistant has been filled by Rebecca Bauer, who comes to us as a librarian already at the CEC school. So some new faces around. We're continuing month over month to see visits and foot traffic continue to increase, getting us back to pretty close to pre-pandemic levels, which is exciting to see in terms of the folks coming into the building. Draft county plan, the new 5-year plan between the Outagamie and Waupaca libraries and the counties, between that group and then Waupaca County and Outagamie County. That planning process is ongoing. The proposal right now that's on the table would keep things mostly the same with some minor changes. One of which, fingers crossed, might provide some small amount of additional funding for digital resources, which would be nice. And I do want to draw attention, lastly, to the increase in volunteer hours that you can see in the statistics reports month over month and year versus year. So our head of adult services, Jan Popple, has been working really hard to expand our pool of volunteers. So this last month of September, we had 81 hours worked by volunteers in September versus just 20 hours the same month 2 years ago. Volunteers supporting library staff do really critical work that makes the library run a lot more efficiently. And it's great to see the numbers increasing, and Jan has really been doing a great job with that. That's my report.
Eric, thank you. Questions, comments? Stephanie?
Okay. The budget, as usual. Page 23 is where my report starts. I did go into a little bit of detail as to what all goes into creating this budget. It's all right there in front of you. We do work on this every single day. I meet with department heads every single day to go through and massage their numbers that are in here just to make sure that we are coming out with a balanced budget. We are still waiting for some information from the county, Fox Valley Tech, and the school district regarding their tax levies. And we will then have the statement of assessment from the DOR that we will use to plug in numbers for the finalized budget. Reporting, I did get the sam.gov renewals done for the city, police department, and fire department so they can continue receiving their federal government awards. And we will be looking at tax roll coming up here soon. So that's really all I have.
All right. Thanks, Steph. Questions for Steph? All right, let's go to Parks and Rec. Laura?
Thank you, Mayor. My report is on page 28. So in the month of September, we spent a lot of time gearing up and hosting Fallorama and planning for Halloween on Main, and our fall programs got started, and we actually have already completed youth volleyball this Saturday, and at the end of this month, flag football will be complete, but we've got our adult programs just busting at the seams and occurring every Monday through Thursday in the rec center. Our 10th annual Fallorama was a huge success this year. We raised over $8,000 for the Friends of Waupaca Parks, which is really great. And I just wanted to point out that for the first time, we had alpacas in Waupaca. That was a new booth that was there. And we also had food trucks, which were a huge hit. And you still had to wait in line to get food, even though we had many, many different food options. So lots of people, a beautiful day, and overall, really big success. We are selling $20 t-shirts that say, "I am a friend of Waupaca Parks," and on the back it has our City Parks tour. So kind of like if you get a musical group t-shirt, you'll see their tour for across the country. Well, this is our City of Waupaca Parks tour. They're really soft shirts, and they're available at the rec center. So if you're interested, come on by. We also have new logos for our department. The circular logo there for Parks and Recreation, we do know that there's a typo, and that has been fixed and adjusted since this memo has gone out. On the end of September, we had our 7th grade field day at Eco Park, and Justin's amazing new tree trek was a godsend because we had a few leaders that had to bow out at the very last minute. And we used that tree trek, and I'll tell you what, it was not only very educational, we taught the kids a lot of new vocabulary, like deciduous conifers, and it's a gorgeous walk through altering terrain. You can see beautiful grasslands and the retaining pond, and you can see the open fields. It was just, I highly recommend just going out there if you need a quick stress reliever and if you want to learn a little bit about the trees. The Community First Lakeman Field is done with their Stage 1 remodel, and it looks absolutely stunning. In fact, Musco Lighting came out there on Thursday night to do their own promo video. So Casey lined the fields, and they put a really great video together, and we'll release that as soon as they release it so everybody here can see it. And just a friendly reminder, registration deadline for beginner and intermediate basketball is October 21st. Halloween on Main is the 25th. That's 4 to 6 p.m. on Main Street. And November 3rd is our wood carving show from 9 to 4 at the Rec Center.
Cool. All right, any questions, comments? Let's go to the police department. Chief?
Thank you, Mayor. My report can be found on page 31. We continued our directed patrols up on High Street with the speed board up there. It's pretty evident that when we have that speed board in certain locations in the community, it really gets people to slow down. Their minimum speed was 20 and the fastest was 35. This was the second week that we did it. During the both weeks, we just issued a few citations for speeding and a lot of warnings. We also went ahead and ordered a new squad. We had a squad that was involved in an accident that was totaled out. I met with the commission last week, and with the insurance money and what we have, we were able to go ahead and get that order in. The next thing is Pete Krager. He's been with their department 18 months now, and that's what their probationary period is. There's a lot of stuff that they have to go through that's in the report, but it's really detailed as to dotting their I's and crossing their T's with every aspect of their job. And we're really lucky to have him because he's also one of our firearms instructors and taser instructor, and he's one of the officers that have put together monthly trainings of just doing monitoring things that we don't do all the time when we work with our firearms, of just making sure know how to reload, or if we have jams as to how to work all that out. He's just really great with doing that stuff. We also have the drug take back coming up at the end of the month on October 26th between 10 and 2. People can come to the lobby with unused medications, even pet medication. They can put it in sandwich bags ahead of time and just throw it in a box when they get there, or they can empty their medications out when they get there. No questions asked. And we're hoping to get between 40 and 60 pounds, and it's just a really good, safe way to get rid of the unused medications. So it's something that we do twice a year, so hopefully we can get what we're looking for. We also partnered with Community Safety Net to provide drug safety books to children in the community. This is something that they had reached out to us and then worked with businesses within the community. And the book is about the pressures that teens face and the smart choices that they can make. It's a pretty detailed book. So we're going to work with the schools. We're going to work with probation and parole, health and human services, and as many different organizations that we can to get these books out, because they are pretty good. But we wouldn't have these if it wouldn't be for the businesses that support us and get us that information. We'll also, we had a fundraising event during Fall Harvest Fest out in King. Jerry Allen and the officers just did an awesome job by putting this together. This is going to be our first ever scholarship for somebody that's going to get involved in a criminal justice program, fire protection, or emergency medical services. So next year for school in the spring, we're going to have a $500 scholarship for anybody that's going into one of those fields, that we can get that, and we hope that this is something that we continue. So these are just a lot of things that the officers are doing on their own free time, donating, and just want to see more people get into our fields, because there's not as many as what there used to be. And then lastly, we will be on Halloween for Main Street. We're going to be up near Stratton's in Main Street Market, but we're going to be doing something different this year. We're working with Theta Care and the fire district. What we're going to be doing is supplying child safety kits. And what that all entails is we're going to be fingerprinting young children. Theta Care is going to be there, and what they're going to do is take DNA samples, and we're going to give those to the parents, and they can take those cards and the photographs and everything home so that they will always have them. Hopefully nobody ever has to use any of that, but in case there is that emergency, that the parents do have that stuff. So so hopefully everybody can make it out that night and stop by.
Gonna take pictures too of their?
I don't know if they're taking pictures or not. Do you know? if
That's
they
really
are, Laura?
cool though.
At your table, I don't know.
That's pretty special.
Yeah.
So
So
thank you
you're
for
welcome.
that. All right, let's go over to IT. Josh?
Yeah, implemented multi-factor authentication in our VPN into the city network. That was one of the requirements of our cyber insurance. We had that put in place at the end of September. I've kind of touched on it a little bit, but Waupaca Online, we have some new technology. Wi-Fi 6 is one of the terms you hear, and we've been very excited about that. It's kind of living up to the promises on paper as far as some being able to get through some obstructions, faster speeds, and some other things. And we did a proof of concept test trying to get a better connection to South Park, which is one of the places we've struggled over the years because of all the trees. On the old equipment, on a good day, we get maybe 15, 20 meg worth of speed down there. We put a new connection in, we're getting over 100 meg. So it's getting through the trees very well, and we're getting much quicker speeds, and the internet on our networks has never been that good at that location. Have our city calendar for 2025 finalized. That's off at the printer right now, and that will be available for pickup by our residents at the election in November, and then we'll have some copies available at City Hall after that for those who may be absentee voted or aren't voting to pick up as well. And then you heard a little bit about the new logos and branding efforts. Been working on updating a lot of the digital stuff, the digital signage, website, and some of the other things with the new logos and branding. And for those curious to see everything going on, if you go to cityofwaupaca.org/city-branding, Everything's on that page, but everything matches, well, Aaron's scrolling by it, but matches the new city logo that we got a couple years ago. Same color, same fonts. Everything looks really cohesive together. That's what I've got.
All right. Thanks, Josh. Anybody have any questions? All right. Thank you, Josh. Let's go to the clerk's office. Barb?
Thank you, Mayor. My report is on page 38 of the packet. Mostly elections. In-person voting starts on October 22nd, in-office voting, I should say, for 2 weeks prior to election. I've been working with Roy and Claudette, who are the chief inspectors, getting them trained on WISVote so they have to have so many hours to be able to log into WISVote. So they're going to be at the election or at the office helping out prior to the election. They started with the nursing homes this week. They've gone to Bethany and Park Vista for the first time. And they'll go back to both of those next week for anybody that missed out on voting. They were on an appointment or gone or something. And then the pre and public test will be the week after that, and then voting the next week. So that's pretty much consuming most of my time. That's all I have.
Thanks, Barb. Questions, comments? All right, let's go over to Aaron.
Thank you, Mayor Smith. City Council members, my report starts on page 39 of the packet. I have a couple updates on the airport projects in there. I've been working with Matt. Matt's been doing a great job keeping that in line as far as the T-Hanger project and the master planning process. Those are also in your city newsletter. So you can see there's some links there. If you want to know more about the master planning process, I highly recommend that anyone go to that link and check out some of the information that's been uploaded so far. Also wanted to touch base on a couple of things that I've heard from department heads already. Obviously, one of our department heads is no longer here, and that is Jared. I just wanted to give credit to a number of staff members that have really, really stepped up in a super positive manner when we've had some of these vacancies. Barb, you've been one for a long time. I know your deputy clerk has been vacant for a while, and we're happy that that's now internally posted. We'll be starting that process. But also, just as of late, Rhonda, Brian, Jane, and the CED department have done a great job. Justin, I know, is no longer here, but he definitely helps pick up some of the slack, too. And they've done it with just an incredible attitude, which is awesome. So can't say how much I appreciate that. Also, another thing that I heard, I know Josh touched on cybersecurity and branding. Josh, sometimes we do have to be very, very reactive, and I know I've mentioned this before, but the amount of work he did on that cybersecurity stuff cannot be discounted, and the urgency in which he did it to meet insurance requirements. So please say thank you to Josh when you get a chance. Did a fantastic job. Want to also mention, this is one of the big ones, and we're going to be talking more about this, we expect to, on November 5th. We want to bring it back as an action item to the city council meeting. But we received some pretty incredible news a week ago from the governor's office that the city of Waupaca was announced as a recipient of a Flexible Facilities Award. And I'm sure everyone has read about that, but it is for the amount of $4.16 million approximately. And the main focus of this grant award was to execute on a number of things that are mentioned in a number of city plans that have been adopted through council over the years. The 2030 comprehensive plan mentions co-working space, business incubator space, access to job centers. So does the economic resiliency plan that was funded all by the EDA. And then also actually our downtown plan. So this is something we've been talking about from a surface level standpoint, specifically to that, what I'm going to say as the old HFH building. HFH used to be in that building. That's right next to the rec center. And this gives us an opportunity to make improvements that are not on city taxpayers' dimes. Now, we understand that there are going to be questions on what are the operational impacts, and those are the things that we will talk about when we talk about it as an action item, hopefully November 5th. We're also working through some questions with the Department of Administration to make sure that we fully understand the expectations from them on the timeline If there's an ability to give us a couple more months on the start to make sure that this thing is planned out as we would like it to be. And also, there are some kind of gray areas on, it needs to be used for that specific purpose, and it cannot be revenue generating. One area it says 2 years after completion, one area it says 5 years. So these are some of the things we're trying to figure out and get clarification on. So look forward to talking more about that. But again, I want to give staff a credit because this was something that when it came time last April to even talk about this as an opportunity, it was something that they were fully on board with, knowing how much work it would be. And I am excited to be surrounded by people with that and have the opportunity to have a $4.1 million improvement, capital improvement, not on city taxpayers' dime. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, if I can just interject a little bit too, we're also looking at, with that grant, which is awesome, I mean, we have to give Greg, our grant writer, some great kudos for being able to land that grant. It's going to be huge for the community, and hopefully as we go through this, we'll fully understand the impact of that. Not only are we looking at the additions to those, but we're also looking at things that maybe we have in our budget in the future, like maybe and I'm just throwing this out here, we need a new boiler system for the rec center, and maybe some of this funding can be used for a new boiler system because we're going to need heating and air conditioning and so on in the new area, and maybe we can just put that together. So that's one of the questions that we're trying to find out from the Department of Revenue on those things too. So that's a good part of that. I had one other comment and I lost it, so I'll send it back to you for now.
Perfect. Interject if you remember it. Next item on my report, Gold Cross budget meeting. We did have that last week. I'll talk about that in the budget too. There are some operational changes for Gold Cross. We're getting a 4th ambulance injected into our consortium because we're adding Greenville. In essence, what that does is that it shifts, so one will be in Greenville. It does shift the other 3 ambulances, which are on a floating system, further west and closer to us. So what we've been told from Gold Cross is that should improve response times to our area in all facets. So Gold Cross I'll let them communicate exactly what that operational structure looks like. They have offered to come to City Council. And if City Council is interested, I would be happy to invite them to a meeting in the future. We also have a Gold Cross strategic planning meeting that the entire consortium will be a part of. I'll be attending that on behalf of the city of Waupaca, and that is October 30th during the evening. You'll see there on my report notable meetings and events as always. And let's see, I thought I had one. Oh, the only other thing I had was Tycor did reach out to us today through an email. It sounds like they have finalized some bids as of today and entered into some contracts, and they said they can expect to have a timeline to us very, very soon, but they'll start quickly. So. Any questions?
All right. Thanks, Aaron. Thanks, department heads. Let's go on to new business. We have license report number 1692. This is a Class B intoxicating liquor license and Class B fermented malt beverage license for Waupaca Crystal Lounge Incorporated, DBA Crystal River Pub and Grill, which is on Churchill Street. And Barb, you want to just set this up for us?
Sure. So Conwell owns the premise at 1332 Churchill Street. He recently leased it out, and that lease is the leasee or whatever is no longer there. So he's just getting his license back for that premise, or asking for it back for that premise. There's some things he has to do, so he's not going to be open right now, but looks to be in a couple months, either himself or if he leases it out. And he is here if anybody has any questions or if he has anything to say.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi.
Hi there. So those that don't know me, Kanwal Singh, I've been part of the community for the last 7+ years. And I was here 6 years ago for the same license. So I operated the bar for 4 years, but the last couple of years I had leased it. And the person that was leasing has closed the bar, unfortunately. And I'm here to apply for. My plan is to reopen within a couple of months. And right now I'm working on some improvements inside the building. And as soon as that is done, I do plan on opening soon.
Awesome.
I'll take any easy question. Any hard question, I'll pass to my brother. You probably know him more.
Well, we'll make sure we make them easy then. Anybody have any questions? Again, the way the liquor license works, it has to be in the person that operates the business. It has to be in their name. So even though Conwell owned the property, the real estate, once he leased that out, then that liquor license got transferred from him to whoever was leasing that property. So this happens, once in a while, and so he's just requesting back the license that actually is his license. It's still for the same premises, so I would see that there is no problem with that. I can tell you, and you can do your own research on this too, but you do have a deadline of June 30th that you will have to open by, otherwise that license will become open to anybody. So think of that June 30th as your date that you need to make sure that you have open doors.
Totally understood. My goal is to be open within 2 months, the latest probably January, but I can't leave the building closed.
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
Yep.
All right. Any other comments, questions? We're looking for a motion to approve this license report.
I'll make a motion to approve license report 1692.
Second?
Motion by Veliker, second by Dykstra, that we approve license report number 1692. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against, say no. Motion carried. Good luck to you.
Thank you, council members. Thank you.
All right, next up, we have resolution number 1566. It's a resolution in support of levy increases to meet needs for the Gold Cross EMS West Consortium. Aaron's going to explain why we need to do this on an annual basis. So, Aaron, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Smith. Let me just make sure I get to the right page. All right. All right, so this resolution is on page 87 of your packet. It was brought to my attention by a couple people, including Alderman Dykstra today. Thank you for the call ahead of time. That there is I think in the first sentence, it does suggest fire protection needs. That should be emergency services needs for the cities of, and then all of the cities within the consortium. So please, when you make the vote, please mention that. This resolution this is something you guys saw last year for the fire district. And when we went to budget for a full-time fire chief, we had to have this levy in which everyone that's a part of that agreement, in that case the district, in this case the consortium, agrees to pass a resolution that gives each municipality the option to increase their levy to cover any extra expenses they have. That doesn't mean that they have to. It doesn't mean that they're going to. But without everyone's cooperation, so to speak, if, like in this case, if you don't get all 20-some municipalities to sign this and have it on record to give to the DOR, then nobody has the opportunity to utilize this tool. So we're being team players here. To be perfectly honest with you, I do not expect all of these to pass this year. There's a lot of municipalities to do it. We talked about it in the Gold Cross budget meeting, and there were some questions, but not everyone was represented. Luckily, if not everyone does this year, it's not a huge increase, and we'll talk about that in the budget in the committee of the whole. So it's not it's not super impactful. But we wanted to go through the process, provide it to everyone, and maybe treat this as a practice year. And if there's ever a larger, more substantial increase in the future, hopefully everyone's familiar with this tool and we can get everyone on board. So we're kind of playing our role here and being a team player with the rest of the consortium to give people the option to utilize that tool if need be. Are there any questions?
Is that a change, Aaron, that's recent in the last couple years?
Yeah, I believe it
With the-
is.
okay.
You know, to be honest, as far as when this came or became available, I don't know. I really only started looking into it when we had our full-time fire chief budgeted last year. Could have been a year or two before that.
Good option.
All right, anybody else have any
Referendum
questions?
for this yet.
We need a motion to approve.
Make a
Move to
motion to
approve.
approve, oh, go on, I'm sorry.
Motion by Olson,
Second.
second by Veliker, that we approve resolution number 1566. Any discussion? If not, I don't know with resolutions. Barb will call the roll.
Play it safe.
Yeah, just make sure that you understand that it's, in that first sentence, it does not mean fire protection, it means ambulance services. Okay? That's okay with your motion? Second? All right. Barbara, call the roll.
Eric Olson,
Aye.
Henry Veliker,
Aye.
Paul Mayo,
Aye.
Dave Peterson,
Aye.
Colin Dykstra,
Aye.
Dimitri Martin,
Aye.
Corey Nagel,
Aye.
Eric Helverson,
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky,
Aye.
9 ayes, motion carried.
All right, next up is similar here. This is Resolution 1567. This is a resolution in support of levy increases to meet needs of Waupaca Area Joint Fire District.
Thank you, Mayor Smith. This one's on page 89 of your packet, City Council, the exact same premise. The only thing I'll add to it is that every time you do this, you have to bring it back every year, and it's got to be for a specific reason. You saw the specific reason for Gold Cross was the 4th ambulance and the picking up Greenville. This one is, actually, the district is budgeting more for equipment replacement down the road, substantially more. So this is for equipment replacement. And I will tell you, this will not come into play for the city of Waupaca because of how our funding formula works out. We actually have a decrease. You'll see me go over that again in the committee of the whole. But we certainly have some of our partners whose valuation increased by a lot more than the average, in which they will see an increase. So again, this would be to help out those in the district.
And I don't think any of the other districts have indicated that they are going to use it, but they want to have it in place just in case,
Right.
once they go through their budget. So again, we're playing good partner here too, at this time. Anybody want to make a motion? Oh, Colin, go ahead.
So are you saying that we're approving the ability to raise our city's levy to support the fire services, but that based on what the fire district is projecting, even if the fire district raises money for the equipment, our levy won't go up anyway? Is that what you're saying?
Yep, our cost in 2005 for fire services is actually a decrease. We will not be utilizing this
For
for
2025?
Yeah, the formula, and not to dig too deep into this, but the formula basically is based on equalized value of improvements of property. So not the land, just improvements of property. And actually, our equalized value did go up, but ours went up a lot less, quite a bit less than, and you can imagine the two townships where it really went up. But, so they're actually taking on more of the cost of the fire district because their equalized value went up a lot more than what the cities did. So that's why we're seeing a decrease in the amount. And quite honestly, even though we hired a full-time fire chief, with the additional grant money that we received
From the state.
from the state, we're actually not, the actual budget number for the district has not gone up, which is really nice. Okay, so we need a motion to approve this resolution.
Motion to approve Resolution 1567.
Second.
Motion by Dykstra, second by Peterson, that we approve resolution number 1567. Further discussion, Barbara, call the roll.
Colin Dykstra,
Aye.
Henry Veliker,
Aye.
Eric Olson,
Aye.
Dave Peterson,
Aye.
Paul Mayo,
Aye.
Dimitri Martin,
Aye.
Corey Nagel,
Aye.
Scott Perchatsky,
Aye.
Eric Helverson.
Aye.
Sorry. 9 ayes, motion carried.
Okay. Next up, we have license report number 1693. You can see on page 91 of your packet, we have one name on there that wants to get a bartender's license, so we would need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Olson, second by Dykstra. We're gonna have to pay by motions around here. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against, say no. Motion carried. All right, skipping down to communications, recommendations of the mayor. I just want you to, November 5th is actually when we're supposed to have our next city council meeting. That is election day, and by ordinance, we're not allowed to have our city council meeting on that date, so it actually will be the next day after that. And again, that's in the ordinance that we move to the Wednesday after that. So mark your calendars, the council meeting has been changed to Wednesday, November 6th. Same time, same place. The only other thing I can tell you about that night, that normally is a city planning commission meeting night, we are going to, I'll say at this time, postpone that November planning commission indefinitely, and probably won't need to meet till December, but we'll say for the time being, it's being postponed. So you'll just have that one meeting that first week. Okay? Laura, did you want to, are you prepared to, because I thought it was pretty interesting at the Dream Team meeting this morning, you talked about the city calendar. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Sure, I can. So, ever since I've lived here, there's been communication about how we need a consistent calendar across the city that highlights all the events that are occurring. And so Marcy Reynolds from WACAB and I and Jeff Anderson met, and Jeff Anderson and the chamber really wants to bolster the CVB calendar, the travel calendar, the events calendar that exists within the chamber, and it's really the chain to main calendar. So we've been trying to communicate among the various groups that have events to make sure that they put their events into that calendar, and also to direct people to go to that calendar to look for events. So, for example, on my own Parks and Rec newsletter, we put our park-specific events that are coming up, but then I have a button right below that says, go to other community events here, and then you can check out all the other calendar events. And it's going to be really vital in the future as we plan ahead to make sure that we're not double booking over other really important events across the city. So they're just really trying to make sure that that's up to date. And they have a new person at the chamber, Mary Beth, who's in charge of that calendar. She's really communicative and very easy to get a hold of. So if you have questions or want to make sure your event gets on there, she's good to talk to.
Thanks, Laura. And Laura, do you think that you could send that link for that calendar to the council members? I know I have it, but
I'd be happy to do that, sure.
yeah. Okay, it's pretty cool.
You're talking about a digital or some sort of electronic calendar, not something that's
Yes,
published?
it's on a website, yep.
Yeah, okay. Would that be for just city organizations that are related to the chamber, or maybe WAHA or
WAHA
anybody
can add
else?
things, yep.
Or-
Anybody else, yep.
So anybody that's got something going on in Waupaca can get
Yep,
on that
especially
calendar.
if it's going to bring tourism in, absolutely.
Right, so people like the EAA group or
Yes.
anyone.
Great ideas.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you just need to get the word out too. I mean, when she sends you the link, make sure you take a look at it. It's in two different views. It's in the old-fashioned calendar view, and then the other is just the, what do you call it, images or whatever on there. And then it's also interactive. So if you see something that you're interested in, just click on that, and it will give you more information about what's going on. It's got a lot of items on it already, but I know there's a lot more that can be on there. Now, there's you know, you're still gonna wanna go to different calendars, like the school district calendar, if you wanna know what sports activities going on. You're not gonna be able to get everything on there. You know, city meetings are not gonna be on there, so you'll still wanna go to the city calendar for those things. But this would be, if you're looking for something to do in the community, it really is kinda cool. So, but we just need to get it out to everybody so that we get it more things included on it. Thanks, Laura. Great project. All right, anybody else? Anybody else? Don't forget that we have a committee of the whole meeting. We're gonna take about 5 minutes between this meeting and the committee of the whole meeting, and then we'll start. We need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Olson, second, I gotta change this. Motion by Olson, second by Veliker that we adjourn. Oh,
Nagel.
I'm sorry. I'm not gonna say you sound like Henry. To adjourn, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against, say no. Motion carried. All right, committee of the whole meeting, I'll call this meeting to order. You have the agenda in front of you. In attendance are all of the same people that were council members that were at the original city council meeting. So we just need a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion by Olson, second by Peterson, that we approve the agenda. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against, say no. Motion carried. All right, let's go to, you're gonna get to see the fiscal year 2025 budget. I guess we'll call that a draft budget at this time, but this will give you the first look at that. So I'll turn it over to Aaron.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Smith. City council members, hopefully you were able to take a look at some of the material and the committee of the whole packet. I'll start by just going really over the memo, which is meant to highlight the more important points and any changes that have happened. First, I just want to state that this does support the city's missions. It does do its best to conserve all financial resources, reduce debt, and protect our bond rating. Also, it is able to provide a cost of living to our employees, and we'll go from there. And it is a balanced budget. First, I'll talk about the notable highlights of property values. So the equalized property value does continue to grow. This is not new. However, we talked about it when we talked about the fire district and the EMS and such. Ours grew about 6%, or $38 million. So that's good growth, but it is less than the average in our within our school district in our area. That's primarily because the townships of Farmington and Dayton, which have a lot of development around the lakes, they actually grew at 22% and 15%, if I'm not mistaken. So just for perspective, which could mean potentially, if all else stays the same, if you assume that the school district in the county and Fox Valley Tech, if all those tax levies stayed exactly the same, then the city would be paying, city taxpayers would be paying less of a portion of those. So we can kind of keep that in mind as we get down to the mill rate at the end, which is just taking a look at our local mill rate. The city's total assessed value, however, has not been finalized, and we are still waiting on the state of Wisconsin to release manufacturing numbers. Right now, in our projections, we're using the exact same number as last year, which I can tell you is not likely. It is likely to grow a little, although it usually does not grow much. We will be showing some scenarios that has about a 1% growth, and I think that brings it to about 633 million approximately. I'm going to skip this next portion, notable changes in the proposed budget, because I believe I cover all of them through each different section. But if someone feels like I'm missing something, please feel free to call me out. I'd be happy to go back up. So first, let's take a look at the revenues. So our property tax levy. We talked about this a little bit, I think, at a former budget workshop. So our property tax levy is always, at least when we're talking about the one that supports the general fund, so our general fund levy is always restricted by levy limit laws. and that is tied to net new construction, which this last year we're using, or for 2025, we have to use 1.22%. Now, again, the way that this has been impacted because of Act 12, presumably, we actually have a reduction in that levy, which I'll show you pretty clearly in one of the projections at the end. But it will be reduced from, you can see there, $2,517,216. $216. Sorry, let's call it 2.517 million to 2.434 million, and that is what it can cap out at. However, that will be offset by state aid, increased state aid. Our debt service levy does increase from 1.662 million approximately to 1.691 million, 1.7%. And this is what we've talked about for the last 12 months plus, when we made that decision last year to raise the debt service levy by a greater amount to avoid like a couple big chunk raises. So we kind of did it all in 1 year, ripped the Band-Aid off, and now the goal is to grow that at a rate that's more closely aligns with our natural growth. So that is why that number is what it is. We will talk about, because of some unexpected things happening with the general fund levy, we'll talk about some options that City Council has with that debt service fund levy at the end of this. State shared revenue, county and municipal aid. Again, this goes up with our with the state sales tax, which is 2.3% this year, $28,000 approximately. It'll be an increase of when compared to 2024. Our transportation aids, this is something that we haven't talked about yet, but this was a large increase, and this was very, very helpful for the city's budget in 2025. Increases about $84,000. And one thing to know about transportation aids, and you've probably heard us talk about this in the past, is it takes, it's a calculation that takes how many miles and how many eligible transportation aid projects have you spent money on in the past 6 years. So the more you spend on transportation aid eligible items, usually street improvements, so on and so forth, the more your transportation aids go up. Another thing to note is that it can never go up or down by more or less than 15% in a year. And I can tell you that 84,000 is right at that 15% level. So it would suggest that we could maybe expect to see that continue that trend, given the calculation of our last 6 years and where that's continuing to go. Personal property aid, this is the large adjustment that's offsetting the reduction in the general fund levy. Increased by approximately $106,000, which offsets that decrease in the general fund levy, and it ultimately brings us to about that 1.22%, same as net new construction. Rental revenues, the only rental revenue we adjusted in this budget is an increase of $25,000 from the water utility to the general fund for rent in the new public works facility. We've talked about that many times. Building permit revenues, we did adjust this up $75,000, as when we look at historical trends, we've been pretty darn conservative in budgeting our building permit revenues, plus with some of our development agreements we have in place and projects we expect to happen throughout not just 2025, but past that. We feel like that $275,000 is a safe number to budget into the future. Personnel services, we talked about this in the personnel workshop. Nothing has changed. You'll notice, and I'm sure a question that everyone has is we still don't have the exact or I shouldn't say CPI. We don't have the exact cost of living adjustment in this memo for employee raises. That is because we still do not have a signed agreement with the union, and while we're in negotiations, we will continue to communicate this as this, hopefully very soon. Health insurance, you can see all of the impacts there. The first 3 bullet points would be the impact to the city in each of those scenarios. And then the next 3 bullet points would be the impact to the employee. And those are annual numbers. There are no new staff full-time positions proposed within the 2025 budget. And then the WRS goes up very slightly at 0.05% for both the employee and the employer. When we talked about this resolution as it relates to the EMS services, I mentioned this a little bit. So this is the Gold Cross ambulance service with those changes in the operations that I talked about, which for those who maybe were watching, not watching council, but are watching now, Gold Cross Ambulance is looking to add a fourth ambulance, or they will be adding a fourth ambulance because we are picking up, the consortium's picking up Greenville. That ambulance will be stationed in Greenville, but what it'll do is it'll shift the other three ambulances further west. Largely the runs and the calls from the Greenville area will cover most of the costs associated with that, with an exception of what you see here, which is about a 2.2% increase for the city of Waupaca, or $1,800. Contracted fire services. I said $2,000. I was wrong in the council meeting. It actually will decrease by $3,174, 2.68% decrease, and that is because of this equation, as the mayor said in the city council meeting, is tied to real property improvement values, and because of those townships I mentioned prior, largely, we grew, but did not grow at the rate that everyone else did, which actually makes our fire services cheaper per the agreement for the fire district. Expenditures tied to services, materials, and supplies. There are some increases, there are some decreases. The substantial increases are tied to cybersecurity, as we've talked about in the past, and property insurance premiums have gone up. That's not just for the city of Waupaca, and it's not just because we have a new public works building. This is something that I'm hearing from every city administrator and every city manager that I talk to when they're putting their budgets together. Those are two of the larger increases that we've seen in kind of our more general line items, but largely these costs remain pretty flat when we look at the total sum of those line items. The transit local share funding, as we talked about in our transit workshop, we are budgeting $10,000 as a subsidy into this fund. It is possible, depending on how some of those agency fares, the revenues tied to the agency fares come out, that we will have to dip into the fund balance. The good news is that the fund balance is at $41,000 right now, so pretty healthy for that fund. Not a conversation we're planning to have for 2025, but in the future it is possible that that may have to move up from $10,000. The airport fund, this is something Matt and Brittany have done a fantastic job on. We are budgeting for a $50,000 transfer from the general fund to the airport fund. This is a decrease in subsidy of $10,000 compared to 2024. And when you compare it to 2021, it's a decrease of $33,000. They're doing a great job, obviously. So I was there on Thursday for what they have is kind of a airport community breakfast that attracts a bunch of people. And there was, I think, 21 people there, and I believe 17 airplanes at one point. That all of them have fuel cards. All of them are most of them are getting gas when they come to those. So that's just one example of events that they've put on to drive traffic, camaraderie, and sense of community at the Waupaca Airport. Those things are resulting in what you're seeing in that narrative. Also, as you've heard, we are working with the BOA on that T-hanger project, and we are expecting that to provide an additional $24,000, not in 2025, because construction will happen in 2025, but in 2026. That T-hanger project is, right now, we could be anywhere from 7 to 9 units. Once you get to 10 units, construction cost goes way up because building code and commercial code changes and kicks it into a whole nother level. So it'll be somewhere in that 7 to 9 unit range, and that number, that $24,000, will be adjusted slightly depending on where that lands. The library fund, right now, we are budgeting to increase the contribution to the library fund by $5,513, and this will go towards allowing staff at the library to receive the same increase as all other full-time city staff and employees. As far as the youth program fund, our youth program fund, we're actually going to increase a transfer from the general fund to the youth program fund in the amount of $9,523 as a result of the funding formula. You're kind of getting a theme here that some of the funding formulas are put together different ways. This one is based on a per capita amount. So because the city of Waupaca's population is growing at a faster pace than the other partners, which in this case would be Town of Waupaca, Town of Farmington, Town of Dayton, we contribute more in 2025 to the youth program fund. Should note, Laura is doing a great job right now about addressing a potential issue within that formula in the fact that it does not account for CPI. So, yeah, obviously, you council members that were here in around 2017, 18, or probably 16, remembers like a large increase where we went back to the townships at that time and asked for a large increase. Well, Laura's doing work to try to avoid that in the future, so we can have incremental increases built within the formula each year, so we avoid that type of a situation again. Next, you will see capital projects funded by general obligation bonds in 2025 and 2026. This is just a reminder, really nothing has changed here since our capital workshop. You see $2.131 million in general obligation funded projects. Again, this is going to be a 2-year borrow we're recommending because of just efficiencies that come with that with a relatively lower dollar amount than we're used to seeing. You can see all of the projects listed there, and all of the detail of those projects are later in this, attached to this memo in the capital section. I know there was a suggestion, Corey, I believe it was you, to also organize these by department rather than just funding source. So that is also attached. If you want to see it by department, you can go later in this memo and see how that all breaks down. Also, capital projects funded by the sewer revenue bonds. This is not different. This remains the same as it was in our utility budget workshop, that $3.593 million. Again, that did go up considerably in the last couple months because of the projected numbers tied to the Bowlby lift station. Capital projects to be funded in the water reserve funds in 2024, $847,000. And actually, yeah, water reserve fund, sorry. I did put that right. At one point, this said, of course, water revenue bonds, but because of the transfers from TIF 8 to the water utility, we will be able to do this through water reserve funds and not have to borrow for that $847,000. Other avenues that we haven't really talked about much because we're not borrowing, capital fund reserves. We do have some reserves that are put together through equipment replacement. So when we sell equipment, that stacks up in some of the departments. You can see the PD is using some of their equipment sales reserves to purchase one patrol squad, one of the 3 that they'll be getting in the next couple of years, and then partial funding for a plow truck in the public works. So it's buying down the cost of an eventual plow truck. Capital projects supported through donations. You can see there, I know Laura is going to be working on a couple different fundraising projects, one with the Lakeman Field concession and bathrooms, and I say will be working on, she's already been working on that a bunch, and actually at a really good level, in which we expect to move forward with that in the very near future. And then also the Eco Park Playground, in which that one will be starting soon. That one hasn't really kicked off, if I'm not mistaken yet, right? Not started. Okay, thank you. Capital projects through the room tax funds in 2025, about $25,000 through the room tax fund will go towards the wayfinding signage implementation. And then also the BOA. Those are pretty big numbers through the Bureau of Aeronautics, and that goes through the master plan process and the $1.8 million. So that's just to kind of give an idea of some of the things that are outside of city funds or through reserve funds. Water utility, we've talked about that in the past. Nothing changes from the utility board meeting. This is being recommended at a 4.1% increase, and again, that's tied to the simplified rate case process. Sewer rates, same. That will be the same as the utility. We're looking at a 3%. Both of those approximately generate $60,000 in revenue for each of those utilities at those levels. The 4.1% for the water is about $60,000, and the 3% for the sewer is about $60,000. There were some questions about what that would be, and I know we were kind of trying to talk about it, and I didn't have it in the utility budget, and I apologize, but here, I actually, to be honest with you, I just took my water bill, looked at an average amount, an average month, and you can see total monthly bill, and this includes water, sewer, and refuse. And if you take a look at all the projected increases, or all the, you can see, or all the recommended increases, you can see where that bill would go on a monthly basis, $70.32 to $72.57. Now, at one point, through a discussion kind of here without anything to look at, we were talking about how, well, it might be 9% or whatever it might be. Well, if you're only increasing each of those lines by 3%, it'd be 3%, or some is 4 and some is 3, so it's a little over 3% total. General fund balance, we've talked about that. We're looking very healthy, especially against our policy in the general fund balance. We're at 30.7%, which is over what our policy states. Our policy, again, states that we need to be between 20 and 25%. That can be impacted in just in the next couple months. If we have a couple of retirements and large payouts, you know, we could eat into that again until we make that up. So, you know, I don't have a crystal ball, but right now we're sitting well enough to absorb some of that. We do have a budgeted surplus in this 2025 proposed budget of $5,189. So I'm just going to call it basically a zero budget, but that is the number that comes out ahead of zero. Our levy, again, is based off of actually a lower number in this packet, but we're going to talk about a couple of different options and why we may consider some of the other options. Again, we do not have the entire mill rate yet because we're waiting on some of that information from the other taxing jurisdictions. But per the recommendations in this memo, that mill rate right now looks like it's going to be around that 754, and that compares to 2024 when it was 756. Again, that's assuming the same assessed value, which is not likely. If you assumed a 1% on that, you'd be more in that like 746 range. So it'd be like a 10-cent decrease if that all came to fruition. Those are projections. That's not finalized. They will be finalized in November. I guess in conclusion, you know, I think you all know, I've just went over what this aims to accomplish. What I haven't done very much of is give credit to our staff, specifically Stephanie. Stephanie, like hundreds of hours put into this work. It's very, very difficult to go through a process if you do not have the utmost confidence that all of the numbers are updated and correct. And Stephanie, I couldn't be more confident that the numbers that we're working off of are exactly what they need to be. So Stephanie deserves just a ton of credit for her due diligence and her attention to detail, not just in budget process, but throughout the course of the entire year to make sure that's the case. And then, of course, department heads put a lot of work in to make sure that they are delivering services as efficiently and as high quality as possible, and those budgets reflect that. Mayor Smith provides a great direction as we go through this. And one of the things we're going to talk about today is something that kind of came up very recently. So I want to thank all of you for that. I'm not going to go, you'll see a bunch of summary worksheets. Of course, as you look through these, if you have any questions on any of them, happy to answer those questions. Probably not something that makes sense to go through line by line or even page by page. But you will see is all the detail is provided as far as each fund and each budget worksheet in the general fund and all of the separate funds that we've talked about, and then some. There's even some funds that are kind of what we call not major funds that are also included in here. So you can see that. I am going to You'll see in here, again, the capital improvement plan, and this is where we broke out both by funding source and by department projects. So you can see that. And get to the final one, which you haven't seen before. And this is the mill rate projection. Again, projection at this point, but it's pretty darn close, we feel. So let's see if I can get this so it's something you can see. You can see obviously the years on top, 2024 actual, and then we got 2025 projections, and then forward to 2028. So what we've done here is we've taken the general fund levy, so this was last year's, that 2.517 million. And then again, big reduction here in 2025 because of everything we've talked about with the levy limit laws and the impacts of Act 12, down to 2.434 million. Debt service, this is that 1.7% increase. So this basically follows what our plan had been. Increase it modestly. TIF, this is something that we don't have control over necessarily. It does climb as our TIF districts get value in them. This number is solid. This was given to us through the worksheets through the DOR, so that is the accurate number, 594,000. But you can see that that leaves us with a total levy that is less, even when you account the TIF levy in, than 2024. I have this highlighted here. This is the assessed value, because this is the one that's not finalized. Again, if we move this up to maybe a more realistic number, maybe that's 633 million, which is about a 1% increase. That drops the mill rate to about $7.47 right in there. Let's look at future. I just want to show you what's happening in the future here. So we do have from this number in 2025, we have the general fund levy increasing just in projections, 1.5% annually. The TIF, because we expect that to go up at a little steeper rate, we have that increasing at 5% annually. And then this blue line would be our debt service fund levy. That just kind of follows our current financial plan. So you can just see increases in there. That's just, those numbers are from working with Baird. And then you can see kind of how that funnels through in future years potentially. Now, the last thing I'll point out on this specific sheet is you'll see this assessed value jump up a ton here in 2028. And that's just a placeholder for a potential revaluation. Last time we did a revaluation, it was the first time we had done one in about 15 years, and we were nowhere near 100%, which if you're at about that 100% of equalized value, that means that that's about the most fair and equitable taxation that can be occurring. If you're off of that, you can have some inconsistencies. So we had talked about trying to build that in once every 4 or 5 years. So this is just a placeholder for that. And you can see when that happens, your assessed value goes up quite a bit to closely align with equalized value. And you can see that can drop a mill rate at that time, depending on what you do with your levies. So that's what that is. All right, so we will get to another option with this, but any questions so far? Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
I just had a conversation with a constituent recently, and of course with taxing coming up or setting the budget, you're all concerned about taxes. And Waupaca apparently has a reputation of being kind of the higher taxed people, period, and leave it at that. And the question concerns the biggest part of our pie and our expenses goes to personnel, does it not?
Yeah, that's
basically salaries,
yeah,
benefits. Yeah, that's true in
the general fund.
Any bigger business, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. How many employees do we have full time? Around
60.
60 full time employees.
Correct.
Is that a comparable number to other communities our size?
Yeah, when you look at New London or Shawano or any of the ones that we regularly do work with or have, yes, that is very comparable.
Very fair. Another question was, the health goes up every year, and that takes a big chunk. Where did our 90% come from, or when did that start? Or, I mean, it's a very generous benefit.
Yeah, it's been that way for a long time. I couldn't.
I think it has with me too. I'm not sure. How much detail?
It's been a while. I can tell you when I was doing some consulting work, Dave, we did some comparables, and jurisdictions all across the state, we couldn't find very few that went 15%. They were 10%, 12%. It's just seems that's the landscape for it out there. But the cost share has been 10% for a long time.
For employees' contribution. That's what
Yes.
you're talking, yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
90% from the cities. But they were looking for places where they could possibly cut something. And maybe a proposal would be in the future at some point to consider, not this year's budget, obviously, but keep it at 90% for the current people, but newcomers, maybe go to something less than 90% for them. And up till a certain time. I don't know how fair that would be, what kind of reaction you would get from that. Okay? That's it. And then the buyout of the 65 people, how many take the buyout in the health? Or take the opt-out, not buyout, the opt-out.
It's a great question, and it actually is going to lead into something I was going to say as it relates to this conversation. We have about 33 people on the health plan, give or take a few, out of the 60.
About half of
So the opt-out actually cuts our people on health insurance in about half. And because we have so few on the health plan, if we move from, like, let's just say 90% coverage to 87.5, you will see sometimes 12.5%. I'm sure you saw that too, Henry. We've done that. We've looked at some of that. It actually makes a very negligible difference if we even moved all current employees to 12, to now contribute 12.5% instead of 10%. It was under $10,000. It was under $7,000, I believe. And that's because when we talk health insurance, that doesn't move the needle very much. You know, what does is when people jump on and off, or jump on, so to speak, that does certainly move the needle a little more. But
So
just
we're
a little
giving
perspective.
$5,000 for somebody to jump off, right, per person?
Approximately.
Okay, I think I'm just doing numbers that he gave, or I heard.
6.
And so,
Yeah.
what difference does that make if it was 2,000 or 3,000, something less than 5,000? Would that make very much difference in,
In my opinion,
how does that trade off as according to, yeah?
I don't know. Without going through that, I
I
couldn't
mean,
say
that might be too detailed a
definitively.
question, but just,
I would say it would be my opinion that you would likely see more people jump onto our health plan, and that would cost the city substantially more money.
okay, thank you. That's good responses.
Okay. Other questions for Aaron? Anybody? Go ahead, Scott.
Aaron, remind me, in 28, you're expecting to do a reval again? Is that where I understood it? Or
I think we'll just kind of monitor to see where does our assessed value end up
Okay.
against equalized value. If we're right around the 100%, there's probably not a need to, but if we get out of whack, just kind of to keep that in mind.
all right, yeah, okay.
Hard to predict what housing costs are gonna go.
Well, I mean, the last time we did it, quite a few people got a big kick in their, property tax. So if they're going to get the idea is like, you guys are going to reval every 3 years, but we're going to end up going up. Is that, that's what
I'm glad you said that. I do want to also kind of that was not entirely because of the reval. Now, some of it was because of the reval because housing grew at a larger pace than commercial.
Right.
Largely, though, it was because we moved that debt service levy up to meet our needs there.
Yeah, I'm not saying everybody went up, but, certain houses, like in my instance, it did go up substantially, but so.
Well, I think Aaron's point was, it was multiple things in that year.
Yeah.
Is the reason it went up.
Right.
It wasn't just because of the
No, I know,
revale.
but-
So don't give the revale a bad name because it's.
Right,
Yeah.
it's already had that bad name, and if it gets out that you guys are gonna do it every 3 years, the perception might be, so I'm just
Yep.
asking the question.
We would make sure we
Yep.
try to educate as much as possible.
Yep.
How much do these numbers take into effect, like the River North buildings, houses? Is some of that baked in, or are these without any of that, and those are new numbers?
So I'll make two comments on that. That's why you see this at a 5% instead of closer to like a regular growth rate. So this is the TID levy. Okay, so that will impact that. So that the answer to that is yes, it is estimated, baked in. And then when you look at the building permit revenues, we definitely took that into consideration for that type of a revenue. As far as the net new construction, 1.5, you saw this year we were at 1.22, previous year we were at 1.7. We're using 1.5 as what we feel like is a good number to use moving forward.
Go ahead, Henry.
Mayor, I guess I just want to thank you for your leadership and the staff. Budget time is always very stressful, and you wonder how are we going to make it, get it together. I think you guys have done a real decent job. I think you're conservative in your projections, and when the actual numbers come, it's going to float our way a little better with the levy and the mill rate. And I think having some healthy reserves is good, because we never quite know what the future holds, and you read different reports and stuff, and we could be in for a higher inflation period and all like that. So having a little bit extra on board, I guess for me, the only thing and I understand why you're suggesting the timing, but I don't know, with the water reserves so well and so strong, and the fact that the TID is actually paying back the utilities is great. We sat 15 years ago and wondered where that TID was going. So it's really great to see that fruition come and the city be made whole, or the utilities be made whole on that. I guess for me, and I don't know where other council members are, if the simplified rate case, I think the water and sewer rates have to happen on the same bill because it'll just confuse the utility customers. It's not a significant increase to single family homes, a couple bucks a month, but I'm worried a little bit about our businesses and our bigger users. That could be hundreds of dollars increase a month. I'm just wondering if the council or the staff is open to maybe, mid-year implementing the water rate increase, or in the last quarter of the year or something. It just seems on the water side, I know the the PSC doesn't recognize your reserves when you go through a rate case, but by the same token, we're sitting on a nice bit of reserves that a few months of lost revenue should not negatively impact it. I think you said the rate increase in the water would bring about 60?
About 60.
5,000 a month. So I don't know. It's just, if we could work a little bit on that with the idea of the impact to our businesses.
Henry, if you don't mind, I'm going to make a comment off that. Great question, great thought. I think you kind of said it, but so the PSC does not recognize the TIF transfers as operating expenses. And the big target we're always trying to hit, you have to be above that 1.1 coverage of your operating and debt service. And the water right now is really, it's like at that 1.1. Mm-hmm. And we're also having an additional 25,000 be moved to the general fund because the rent is going to go up. Now, to your point, I would say, if city council felt strongly about that, the sewer is the better place to consider that. would be my suggestion.
I think, and we said this at the last meeting though, too, when we talked about sewer and water, and, you know, Henry will talk about that, you know, at the staff level, and you'll also have the opportunity to make a motion when we do approve those budgets, at a future time. But I think the thing that concerns me the most is if we don't keep up with cost of living, we have some major projects that we're gonna be doing in the near future, mainly Fulton Street, we're doing, what's your street, Scott?
Elm Street.
Elm Street, there's one other street too that we're doing in the near future too. I can't remember, and Justin's not here, but, so there are, and we're not done yet, you know. He even talked about the lead pipes and stuff like that too, so, you know, we still have some major projects that we need to do, so we gotta be a little bit careful in making sure that we at least keep our dollar equal to what our expenses are going up. So, appreciate the comment, but we did take that into consideration when we looked at those rate amounts. I think Colin had a question, Dave.
Who's next? I'm on this topic, so.
Go ahead. If that's all right with you, Mayor.
Okay, yeah.
Because
I'm sorry.
on the same topic.
I'm sorry, Mayor.
I'm just saying I'm on the same topic before he goes off, because I was gonna support the raise because it was recommended by Baird, and they seem to know our finances pretty clearly, and they're the ones that highly recommended going to the raise, yeah. That's it.
Yeah, I know we made it, and I'll just finish on that part, but I know we made the comment at the last meeting that we haven't had a raise since 2014, and that's part of the reason why we're raising. Well, it's not the reason that we're raising it, it's because our expenses have increased. That is the reason why we're doing it. Colin, go ahead.
Well, my question was, on the last form, the Inland Lakes Fund is a zero, I guess. Is that 10K? I think it's in general 10K. But I don't know that we've had the meeting, but maybe I'm missing that.
It is. That's a great question, Colin. In past years, we had that, and then there was a suggestion to just leave it out.
Oh,
because
okay.
it's a different taxing jurisdiction, but that's about 2 cents, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Just so I was.
Great question.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Go ahead.
I just wanted to go back to we're talking about sewer and water. I would really prefer to see us, instead of going a decade and a half without any increases, maybe 1/4 to 0.5% smaller increases year over year, so that we're not having to do larger numbers. And that way, not really seeing an impact, as Henry pointed out, on a bill all of a sudden going up significantly. I don't know if that's an option at this point, if we have to do 3%, or if we could start with smaller numbers and just continue those, but to the mayor's point, a decade and a half without any adjustment is kind of a long time, but.
Yeah. So I'll answer one of your questions directly. Not an option in the water, because it's determined by that simplified rate case. Yes, an option for the sewer, and also something that we talked about in the future, maybe building in 0.25%, 0.5%, whatever it might be. So, yeah.
Okay, any other questions? We talked today, so we're gonna show you another option. I think you have that available, right, Aaron?
Yes, I do.
So we're gonna show you another option. I'll warn you that the other option actually sees a mill rate increase. But I want you to take a look at it, and I want you to think about the reasons why we would decide to do a mill rate increase. It's a pretty minimal. I could tell you, if you have I want to make sure I get this right. So if you look at option 2 here, just to go to the bottom line, just so you understand that, if you were to choose option 2, which we're calling this one, versus option 1, it would be about a $22 increase on the city's portion of the property tax on a $100,000 home. So you're looking at less than $100 on a $500,000 home, okay? And so I think it warrants discussion because of that small dollar amount. So, Aaron, I'll let you dig into the detail there.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So one of the reasons we took a look at this was because of, we had our financial plans. Those financial plans were to grow the debt service levy at 1.7%, closer to that natural growth rate. Obviously, that also assumed that our general fund levy also grew at about that 1.5%. That's not what's happening. General fund levy is actually getting reduced. And if you took kind of the net impact of all of that, what I just showed you as option one is about $120,000 less than we had planned for from a total levy standpoint. So what we did is we adjusted this debt service levy up $120,000, which would have mimicked kind of what we were planning from an overall levy standpoint. That pushes this up, this total assessed mill rate, that 765, which the mayor already stated is about $9 on a $100,000 home. You can see the percentage increases there, 1.18%. Total levy goes up about 2.18%. So why would we want to consider this? Well, if you push, let's take this. Let's just assume for a second, and I don't know this for sure, but again, as I mentioned, this is a year in which if all taxes remain the same in each taxing jurisdiction, the city of Waupaca residents and property owners should be paying less on the overall mill rate because of the value changes in those other taxing jurisdictions. Okay. Also, this gets us obviously at a higher rate, which conserves or preserves our debt service levy fund balance. Okay, now we don't want to preserve that forever. That's there to pay off principal and interest, right? However, we have sent this to Baird just to see if we were able to preserve that, that'd be at about $1 million, let's just say, for the next several years. How could we use that $1 million to prepay debt and get more aggressive on debt to put us in a better position from a geo capacity standpoint? Of course, again, mitigate the need for increases in future years, in which maybe it works out not in our favor, right? In which maybe our equalized value goes up at a higher rate, or in which our general fund levy goes up at 2.5% because we had a lot of construction. And how does that impact also? Like right now, we're working off of several years where we're looking at about $1 million borrows for our infrastructure. So also, how does that impact that number? Like, does that get us to $1.5 million annually in the near future so we can continue to invest in our infrastructure and not worry as much about falling behind in that area? So to be quite honest, I don't have the exact answers to all those questions, but it has been sent to Baird, this concept, and Baird would come in on November 5th. We have a gap. We actually have nothing scheduled from a budget workshop standpoint on November 5th. 6th. And 6th, I'm sorry, yes. Yep. I've been saying 5th a lot. So if this was something that City Council wanted to consider and hear more about, we could have that scheduled as another committee of the whole meeting before the final, and then we'd get direction on this and then final adoption of the budget in the second meeting in November.
Let me just chime in here too, because this is a discussion that the three of us had earlier today. And so I want to just give you a little bit of history and then of what we've done in the past. And Henry maybe can even chime in a little bit too. But the way levy limits work, the way that you have to pay for infrastructure is really by borrowing money. And until just this budget, and I can't remember what we borrowed 2 years ago, but we've been trying to borrow $1.5 million per year. So if we do a 2-year borrow, that would be a $3 million borrow to do infrastructure projects in the city. And quite honestly, with the addition of the debt that we have by having the new public works facility, we were not able to do that and make it work within the current budget. And so you'll see that, and Aaron brought that up, it's just over $2 million that we're actually going to borrow over the next 2 years. So that's almost a decrease of about just over $900,000 that we're not going to be able to put into infrastructure if we use what I'll say is Plan A or Plan 1 or Option 1 that's up there. And this will help in that area, but more importantly, what it will do, and we should all look at our own budgets like that too. If we have a way to be able to pay off debt quicker, we should look at that option and seriously think about it. It doesn't mean that you have to agree with me right now, and I just want you to think about it, but, because I'm not sure exactly, I mean, quite honestly, I'm leaning towards option 2, but I don't know necessarily if I might change my mind by the time you see this in the second meeting in November or not. Your feedback obviously will help in making that proposal. But it does 2 things for us. It does, one, it continues to increase or to use the dollar amount that we need to maintain our infrastructure in town, and it also gives us the ability to pay off debt quicker. And I think both of those things are a win-win for the city. And you're, again, I said $22, but Aaron corrected me, it's actually $9. So you're only looking at about $81 $9 on 100,000?
On 100,000.
So 9 times 5, so it's only about a $45 increase if you want to go to the max size of housing, $500. I appreciate the comments, Dave, you made that people believe maybe our city taxes are a little bit high, but the city offers so much more than where these people think that they can build a house and live, and I don't want to have that argument with people that don't live in the city. And the people that do live in the city, they really need to get a better understanding of what we use our money for, because we do use it wisely. We've been frugal with our budgets for a long time, and we've tried to keep it. If you look over the last 20 years, you'll see that actually the money that we're receiving from the state has gone down, and we've been able to keep our budgets and our mill rate pretty balanced, quite honestly. So we've been making improvements in that, but we don't want to go from $7 to $4 and mean that we have to lay off a third of our employees. It just doesn't work that way. So I don't want to get into that argument, but I just want to say that, we have to look at what makes fiscal responsibility for the best fiscal responsibility for us. So, sorry, I got going on a tangent there, but I just wanted you to know that our thoughts on where we think that we can use that extra money in the debt service. And here's a question for you, because Aaron can answer this pretty good. Does everybody understand how the debt service fund works? I mean, is that something you want to know? Everybody knows? Okay.
I can use a little refreshing.
Yeah, Aaron, if you want to, it's pretty easy, but, but Aaron, if you want to just explain how the debt service works.
Yeah, so it can be confusing. Debt service fund and capital fund are actually 2 different funds. But so first I'll explain capital fund. I think it's easier that way. Capital fund is the revenues that come into capital fund are proceeds from bond issuances. So when we borrow money, proceeds go into that fund. Then it's an out, we pay for capital projects. Okay. The debt service fund, the revenues are our debt service fund levy. And then when we make expenditures, those expenditures are to pay off our principal and interest payments. So we do have about a little over a $700,000 balance right now in there.
Can you show that screen?
Yeah, you know, I thought I definitely can.
So if you think about it like your checking account, okay, you start the year with $100,000 in your checking account. Everybody has that, right? And so you bring in revenue for the year of $200,000. So now you have $300,000 in your account. You have principal and interest payments that you have to make throughout the year. That takes up $150,000 of that $300,000. So you end up with an ending balance of $150,000. So by putting more into the debt service, that keeps the debt service balance at a higher level unless you decide to pay off more debt, to pay debt early, or if you decide to use it for capital improvements that we have, meaning that 1.5 that we try to budget for annually. So, go ahead.
Yep. Thanks, Mayor. So this is option one. This is what you had in your packet. These are very small numbers. I'm going to try to a little bit. A lot of numbers. Just going to go to the ending fund balance. I think that's going to be the simplest way to do this.
What would we do if we had a 19-inch TV up there, Eric?
Yeah. This right here, you can see in 2025, we'd actually be dipping into our fund balance by about $41,000. That brings our fund balance at the end of the year to $732,000. You can see how that fluctuates over time, trying to keep the debt service levy growing at that 1.5 to 2%. And eventually it gets down to out there to 316. Okay, this is option one. So this is kind of a tool really that's been used to keep taxes as flat as possible. Option two.
And can I just add one more thing to this? Sorry. So once the money is in the debt service, it can only be used to pay off debt, principal and interest. You can't use it for anything else.
Correct.
Okay? So.
Correct.
Good.
Here is the next one. This is option two. So you can see if we brought that levy up to that amount that was proposed, here's where you would see the ending fund balances. And then the question becomes, can we use that amount to prepay off, obviously, some of our debt or pay it off early to position us for more capacity or potentially be able to pay for more infrastructure improvements sooner. That's the simplest way to explain this fund. The only other thing I'll show here, I said, there, you see this 230. So these right here are all debt service fund levy amounts. These are revenues coming into the fund. You'll see there's another revenue. This is TIF 8 transfers. Okay, so you can see we're also aided by TIF 8 transfers for several years, starting in 2026.
I'm glad you brought that up too, because you can, if you look at that line that he's just talking about, that, so the TID 8 is paying back the general fund for monies that the general fund had to lend TID 8. But you can see that it's blank in 2025 too. So again, that would be another reason why we would want to use more money and put it into the debt service fund, because we don't have that extra revenue coming in until 2026.
Anything else, Mayor, on these sheets?
I don't think so, unless you have questions.
I know we only control what's on the city portion of the tax bill, but I'm just wondering if there's any rumblings about the others that are on the tax bill. Have we heard anything there?
I don't, yes, but to me, they're just rumbling, so I don't want to comment.
Okay.
Because I'm not involved in those
We
conversations.
do, I mean, yeah, it's hard to predict what the school district and the county and for a smaller portion, the Fox Valley Tech, is going to do if they're gonna increase, you know, they have levy limit type situations, similar to we do too. The big thing that Aaron brought up too is as though we have to remember that our equalized value, even though it went up, is going up. It's not going up as fast as, or at least in this last year, as ours is not going up as fast as the townships are that were, you know, in the county and so on. Now, there are some townships and city that maybe will be a little bit different, but if we just look at the townships within the school district, we can, again, you hate to use the word assume, I know how that works, but you can assume that our school tax, the city taxpayers are gonna pay less in school property taxes, even if their budget goes up, just because of the equalized value difference. So there is a pretty darn good chance that the total tax bill will be less than what it was for city taxpayers than it was this year. I mean, but again, yeah,
With option 2, right? It's,
either option,
yeah.
yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You've given us an interesting option, Mayor and staff. I know when we made that tough decision last year to go higher on the debt service levy, I think for me it was understanding that we were going to probably stay level or not do much in 2025. But by the same token, you know, we have to invest in our business. And I think if we understand it and can explain it to say this is for debt service, it's for capital projects, it's not going towards operating and those kind of expenses, that what we're doing is we're investing in our community. And if we're looking at that minor of an increase and anticipating a smaller share of the overall tax bill, as the mayor just explained, I think I could vote for the option 2, because I just think it's a responsible thing to do financially for the city. We have a fiduciary responsibility to keep our infrastructure up and make those investments. And the only way we can do it in Wisconsin and local government is we have to borrow. And if it allows us to pay off debt a little earlier as we evaluate things year to year, I think it's a win. It's a winner on a lot of fronts, I think.
Thanks, Henry. Paul, go ahead.
Is Baird coming on the 6th, or do we have to request it?
I have already requested it in an email.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I assumed that would be helpful for council.
Remember that it's good that Baird is coming because they can explain, you know, how we can use those debt service funds and where it would make the most sense to do that. But the ultimate decision is going to be yours. You know, I mean, if you tell Baird that you want to put an extra $200,000 into the debt fund, they're going to be happy as a lark to see that, because that makes us look financially better, okay? So they're just going to come and they're going to show you what those projections look like. They're certainly not going to give you they're not going to be here to tell you that you should take option 1 versus option 2. And don't expect that. That's my point, I guess. But I think your point is, Paul, you would like to see Baird come. Yes. Okay. Speaking of that, you will be running that meeting too. Yeah, so, all right. Colin, you had a comment?
Yeah, I was going to ask if I wanted to rephrase what you guys have just said and then follow up with a question. So the city has debt. The debt service levy plus the amount of funds in the debt service fund are what pays the principal and interest on our debt every year. Is that statement correct?
Correct, with the only caveat that it's not every year that fund balance is used for that. But those are the two things.
Those are the two sources that we can pay our principal and interest.
And right now, in the near future, TIF 8 transfers as well.
Okay. And then my second question, which I don't see in these documents, is what is our debt? And I'm going to talk about it a little bit as I understand it. It's my understanding, at least when I started here, I talked with Kathy, who had Stephanie's role before this, and she explained to me to fund our capital improvements, we would borrow every year. At the time, I seem to remember us either making the number up, say it was $2 million, but I thought it was at the time $2 million, which keeps going down, which is the point that we're talking about this, is because we want to get that capital improvement number back up. So there's a portion of our debt, as I understand it, that's used to pay off what I'll call our continuing borrow for capital improvement. After I asked her about this for a while, she said, yeah, we just keep borrowing that same number. And I said, well, how much do you pay back every year? She said, same amount, which didn't make any sense to me. But as the mayor said earlier today, that's how this works. I don't know why, but that's how it works. And now we have, in addition to that, every year kind of built up over 10 years of, I don't know the exact number, but bear with me. Say it's 10 years of $2 million that we paid, or we borrowed every year for $2 million. We pay off the $2 million, a little bit of each of those 10, and then acquire another, whatever we can bear via the interest rate and et cetera, so we can have more capital improvements. So part of this money that I talked about a second ago, which pays the principal and interest on debt, pays the principal and interest on that debt, and then there must be some other debt that we're talking about too, which is the infrastructure, such as the large building we just built, and other, what I'll call, not every year capital borrows. Am I understanding that correctly, or close to correctly?
You are. You're, and I can tell you that this is a good reason why we would want Baird to come, because Baird will be able to separate. They'll be able to show you on a chart. Think of a bar chart. They'll be able to tell you how much of that money is going towards the public works debt and how much is going towards those yearly or
capital improvement borrows, I'll call
that we do.
Okay.
And then any other debt geo debt we might have.
All right. So then my last point is, all of our department heads, I think you guys all noticed that, at least to me, really struggled this year trying to find capital improvements. I know the police department, et cetera, were trying to find money to improve our facilities. And it seemed like they were all trying to get part of this $2.1 million because we can't do the yearly borrow, it seems, this next year. So everybody's struggling to do capital improvements. And I think what you're saying is that by adding 1%, I think, to our tax levy, we can help all of our department heads and all of our community have money available to improve their capital budgets. Is that what the goal of this is?
It is. It's one of the goals.
Okay.
It is a goal.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And Baird will help us define to the amount.
All right.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thanks, yeah. Eric, I'm sorry. Corey,
I guess
saw
one
Eric
thing
say-
that would probably help me get a little bit better focus on too, talking about, as Colin did, there's $2 million here and we pay this back there. Is there actually out there a capital improvement plan, infrastructure plan that's out there for 1 year, 5 year, 10 years, so we can kind of see what those needs are? They know, police department, they're looking for squad cars, they gotta wait. So what are these big capital projects that are out there that are on the wish list that we're just saying, well, we're gonna throw $2 million in there in 2026 and.
If you take the wish off of there, I'll agree with you, the list, okay?
Yep.
All right, so we did show you that, but we're at the fifth meeting, if you could just have that ready, Stephanie, again, so that they could see the capital improvement, the 5-year plan. I think we actually do go out 5 years.
Yeah.
Yep. So that there are a couple lists in here, Eric. I'll try to
Goes up
find
to
it.
29.
Yep, so it goes out 5 years. We typically haven't gone out further than 5 years because.
Because I looked at that too, and it was like, yeah,
I
there's
think
some.
that's it.
Yeah, so this is something our department heads work on each year, and they are asked to go out 5 years.
Okay.
And you'll see the different funding sources, and that all plays into it too. But to go out much further than that, very inaccurate.
But that's a great question. You can't do something if you don't know what the plan is, so. Yeah. Thank you for that question. Corey?
So last year, it was around this time, and we were talking about, do we have a big jump for 1 year, or do we do it kind of a 2-year spread? And there was a lot of discussion at one of these meetings. We decided to do sort of the 1-year jump in that number, but now we're talking about, actually, now we're going to have a little bit more this year. I feel like we're almost being asked for more money over a 2-year period than what we were talking about last year before we decided to do the 1-year jump. And that's sort of where I'm having a hard time with this, as well-intentioned as it is. We voted for a 1-year jump, and then we said things are going to be flat, but now that's not necessarily the ask. So that's what I'm having a hard time with. Like, and I voted for a 1-year jump and then flat, not 1-year jump and then, we have other things, so let's, you know what I'm saying? I mean, that's sort of what I feel like. And I'm not saying these things are ill-intentioned, they're well-intentioned, but that's what we talked about last year. And if we had done the 2-year spread, would we even be having this conversation? And my guess is probably not, right?
Yeah, I don't know how to answer that last question. However, I will say, like, at no point can we say, yes, it's going to be exactly flat a year from now or not. I think what I've tried to communicate is, yes, 1 year big jump, and then as close to flat as possible, likely aligning with our natural growth rate, which is option 2 actually is that, because that's really what we expected. If we didn't have this down shift in the general fund levy, this is what it would be. So good question, and I totally understand that perspective.
I would say we're having this discussion too because we didn't get there in 1 year. And you could say that we probably didn't have the most accurate number that we needed to anticipate what was going to happen in year 2. And I say that we didn't get there in 1 year because we had to reduce our borrow this year down to $2 million instead of the $3 million or the 1.5 per year. So I would say even though we had good intentions in doing it all in 1 year, we weren't able to get there. So that would be my answer to you.
I believe when I quick look back from our committee of the whole on 2024, our projection for 2025, our committee of the whole from 2023, we're 2024 now, the projection for 2025 was 1.5% increase. So I think we're still beating that. So, to your point, and I agree with you, we tried to make that as small as possible, but it appears to me that our estimate was 1.5 last year. So we're still keeping it really small. Not that that's I don't know which way to go either way, but if you're having a hard time stomaching it, it's less than what we thought we would do last year, from what I can see.
Thanks. Anybody else have any other comments? Again, remember this committee of the whole, so we're not going to make any decisions tonight. It's here for food for thought for you. Whether you agree or disagree, I would hope that you would take both scenarios seriously and really think about what's best for the community as representing the community. Okay, and if you have other comments, don't be afraid to contact either Aaron or Stephanie or myself, and we'll certainly try to answer as many questions as we can for that. Remember, now the timeline, as Aaron has explained, November 6th, we are going to have a workshop now because we're going to request that Baird come to that. And you said they are able to come?
I haven't got that confirmation, but I'm sure they'll make them. One of them will be available.
Okay. And then on the plus 14 is what, the 19th. So on the 19th, November 19th is when you would be looking at the budget, and the request would be for you to ratify that budget. Okay, so there would be a public hearing on that night.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's the final.
Yep. And so it's on the 19th. Again, you're gonna see those final numbers. You can ratify the budget that night. I mean, that's what we've done in the past. We still have a couple weeks in between there, though. We need to get that number to the county by what, December 1st?
Yeah, early December. December 1st would be ideal.
Yeah, so I mean, if the 19th, if you still need more time, we probably have another week to 10 days to have that decision made. Okay?
Mayor?
Yeah.
At one of our past workshops, we were supposed to discuss property. Can we get that on the next workshop with some vacant buildings? I don't think we ever got around to that. That was like from the first workshop. I'd like to hear more about some of these vacant properties that we have.
Oh,
We've been here for 2.5 hours, so we don't need to start a new topic.
Has it been that long? I'm having so much fun. We can. So we're basically talking about the Churchill Street property, the Water Street property, School Street.
Which School Street is now
Yeah, with this new
aligned
project.
with this grant.
But we can give an update on that.
Yep.
And where we're at. I can tell you that we're still struggling at the staff level, trying to figure out how to market those properties. So, but we can update you on all that, if you can remember to put that on the agenda for the 6th.
Yep.
Anybody else? Yeah, our limit is 2 hours, so we went beyond, I'm sorry. We would need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Olson, second by Martin, that we adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Against, say no. Motion carried. We're adjourned at 8:26 PM.